I was sitting across from a CMO, a successful guy, 200K salary, respected, a team of 40 people. And he said something that I will never forget because it resonated with me. And I know exactly how he felt. He said, I know exactly what I need to say to my CEO. I've known for 6 months. I just haven't said it yet. So I asked him why, and he said, the timing is never quite right. And I said to him, if you're watching this, there's a conversation that you're also avoiding. Maybe it's at work, a team member who's underperforming, a boundary that keeps getting crossed, a decision that you know needs making, but it feels messy. Maybe it's at home. Okay, your partner asking if you're okay, and you keep saying fine when you're not. Or maybe, and this is the one that's most expensive, it's a conversation with yourself that you're avoiding. The conversation about whether you are actually operating at the standard that you expect. And here's what that CMO didn't realize. The conversation that he was avoiding with the CEO wasn't the problem. The avoidance of the conversation was the problem. Let me tell you what happened with him. He'd been brought into this business to turn around a brand, to turn around a marketing function. And he had. Results were strong. The team were performing. But his CEO were overruling him on strategy, on hiring, on budget, and micromanaging him. Not maliciously, just casually through habit of himself. And every time it happened, he would think, I need to address this. I need to address this. I need to address this. But he'd rationalize it with this other self-talk. It's not the right time. We've got a board meeting next week. He's stressed about the quarterly numbers. I'll bring it up after we close this campaign. 6 months of this. And by the time we spoke, he wasn't angry at the CEO anymore. He was angry at himself because he trained the CEO to ignore him completely by never drawing the line, by being polite when he should have been direct. And the worst part of this is it wasn't just affecting his work. His wife said to him earlier in the week, you're different, you're quieter, you're like someone else, you're walking around the house with your head up your arse. And he was. Because when you lose authority with yourself like that, whether it's at work or otherwise in any domain, it doesn't stay there. It follows you around, it follows you home. So I asked him the question. I said, if you knew with absolute certainty that delaying that conversation for another month would make it worse, would you have that conversation today? And he didn't even hesitate. And he said, yes, of course. So the obvious follow-up to that is, well, why haven't you had it? And he said something that I hear constantly from people at that level. He said, because it feels unnecessary, like I'm making it bigger than it needs to be. And there it is, that word, unnecessary. That's the trap. High performers, most people like him, maybe people like you, have been rewarded for their entire life and their careers for being polite, for smoothing things over, for making sure there's no waves, for making the person in front of you feel comfortable and making everyone else comfortable as well. And early on in your career and life, of course, that works. When you're a kid, of course, you're taught that politeness is a virtue, but at a certain level, politeness isn't required. It stops being a skill and it morphs into avoidance, because the conversations that matter at that level are not comfortable. They require you to disappoint people, to make decisions that don't please everyone, to hold a line even when it's inconvenient. And here's what nobody tells you about those delayed conversations. That CMO eventually had the conversation with his CEO. And you know what happened? His CEO said to him, I had no idea that you felt that way. I thought I was helping you and I thought you were fine with it. A 30-second conversation, 6 months of resentment solved. And here's what he couldn't get back. The 6 months of operating below his standard, second-guessing himself, the trust that he'd lost with himself, the times he looked at his wife in the eye and said, I'm fine, when he wasn't. That's the real cost of the avoidance. Because every time you delay a conversation that you know you need to have, you're not just postponing it, you're teaching yourself that you can't be trusted. And your brain and your nervous system notices that. It notices that you talk yourself out of things, that you negotiate with yourself, that you compromise on standards that you said were non-negotiable. So that becomes your identity and your belief. So you reaffirm it. And over time, that erodes something critical, your authority with yourself, not authority with others. Of course, that comes secondary and is important, but authority with yourself, the ability to say, this needs to happen and actually do it. I know this pattern well because I've lived it, right? I had a team member who was underperforming, a great person, worked hard, but in the wrong role. And I knew within months. I delayed the conversation for 9. Why? Because I told myself I was being fair. Give them the time. Don't be that corporate dickhead who fires people quickly. But really, I was just being polite with myself and with them. And in those 9 months, they knew, the team knew, everyone kind of knew. And when I finally had the conversation, you know what they said? I've been waiting for this, because I knew it wasn't working as well. 9 months of us both pretending and dancing at the dance. Okay, and the person that I was most angry with wasn't them, it was me, because I knew better, but I did it anyway, right? That experience taught me something that I now watch out for in everybody that I work with. Most of the people I work with, whether it's the CMOs, like the example I gave earlier, whether it's senior leaders, executives, directors, business owners, they don't come because they lack discipline. They come because they've been polite for too long. It's a big factor. They don't know how to be direct. They delay the conversation with the underperforming team member until performance becomes an issue, or they avoid the boundary conversation at work or with themselves. And resentment makes them snappier at others. And people then think they're the problem, right? They postpone the conversation with their partner until there's so much distance. They can feel it, but they've forgotten why it's there. And that conversation with themselves, they've been avoiding that for the longest. The one about whether they're actually where they want to be, whether the way that they are operating matches the standards that they used to hold or that they want to hold. And here's the thing, the conversation itself is rarely as hard as you think. The hard part is admitting that you've been avoiding it, or noticing that you've been avoiding it, because that means admitting that you've been polite when you should have been direct. And once you admit that, you have to change. So what do you do about it? Well, here's the thing that I told the CMO, and here's the thing I'm going to tell you. Stop waiting for the right time. That is the number one thing. There is no right time for an uncomfortable conversation. There is only now or later. And later always costs more. Second thing you got to remember is stop negotiating with yourself. Okay, if you know that a conversation needs to happen, the conversation needs to happen. Stop looking for excuses for it not to happen, because there is plenty of them and you can pick any of them. The rest is just you stopping being polite with yourself, because politeness at your level is expensive. Okay, and the third thing to remember is to try and separate the conversation from the outcome. You can't control how the other person responds, and you're not responsible for their emotions. You can only control whether you were honest. And honest doesn't mean harsh. It means clear and consistent in your communication. It means saying what's true without softening it so much that it becomes meaningless. That CMO, after we spoke, he had the conversation with his CEO the next day, not because I gave him courage or motivated him, but because he stopped lying to himself about why he was delaying it. And once he saw that, the delay became impossible. So here's my question for you. What's the conversation that you've been delaying? You know which one it is. You've rehearsed it in your head. You know what needs to be said, but you keep on waiting for the right time or the right words or the right insert excuse here. And every day you continue to delay it, you're teaching yourself something. That comfort to you is more important than clarity. That politeness to you is more important than honesty. That your authority with yourself is negotiable, okay, when it's not. If this resonates, I send out a weekly letter. It's private. It's not performance bullshit. It's just the thinking and principles behind how I work with people at your level. It's called the private letter. It's in the link below. It's in the description below. I'm smirking because that's such a creative name. Either way, have the conversation and I'll see you in the next one.